So I feel like we're in the home stretch. We'll see how things go. I don't know if we'll wrap this plane up in this video. We still have a lot to do, and I think a lot of our detailed work is done, but you never know. We've got the contra drive to install, we've got our servos and our wing to install, we've got tail wheel to install, electronics and everything to figure out, battery plate to figure out, so still lots to do. Wheels, wheel pants, lots to do. So welcome back to video 5 in the series on the Nurila Glacial aircraft. Very cool aircraft, very unique looking, but let's dive back in. All right, so first place where I'm going to start is on the wings. Now I'll give you guys a layout here as to how things are working on the wings. So this is the top wing, and if we go like that, so that is going to be aileron 1, aileron 2, lower wing is aileron 3, aileron 4. So that's how we're going to lay things out. And if you watch the previous video, we did make this pocket a little bit smaller. Now I can see our wood in here. Now the pocket's only about probably 2 to maybe 3 millimeters smaller than it should be. So I actually can see the wood right at the end of trusty bent screwdriver here, and on this side we're butted right up to against the wood. So I don't think we aren't gonna have to do any additions, reinforcing, extra stuff. You can see here our servo just fits in that pocket widthwise and lengthwise, so that's great. There is a cardboard tube, so if you look in the hole there, it may show up, but we've got cardboard tubes run right to this location right here. So we are still going to, as per usual, bundle our servo leads up, have them just kind of buried in this section right here, and then we're going to have our connector accessible here. So the one thing I haven't really figured out yet, and this is kind of where we have to play around with this, is our linkage system. So I think we're just going to use our metal arm again, the red aluminum arms, probably just ball joint, just to keep things nice and simple and accurate, just like we did on the tail section. I mean, we could run our servo this way, or we could run it that way. I'll probably run it this way, so our length of our system here is a little bit longer, allowing a bit more flexibility. You know, if you go like this and your ball joints are shorter and they're close together, it allows a little bit less flexibility. I'll play around with it and see, but that's how things are going to be laid out. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is get our servo leads done up. We want to get those run through the wing. I don't think we're going to do anything overly special for the connector at the wing. So here's an ash lock connector as an example. The 6-pin ash lock connector is a little bit too wide to fit through here, but we could open up that slot a little bit, just square it off. We hardly have to do anything, and we could have this just sitting in there. Downside is we have wing bags on order for this plane, and that might interfere with the wing bags. So we probably want to keep this a little bit more low profile and simple. And that brings up a really good point. When I said wing bags, I ordered a set of Revic wing bags and fuselage bags and tail bags for this plane. So you can see here our Revic wing bags. Those are for our big BDX that we've got here. We've also got a set for the big BDX. We've got fuselage bags for all of them as well too. So the Revic bags are something that we use as a staple here. We're a Revic dealer, so I highly encourage you, if you're getting a plane and you really want to protect it and give your plane the best fighting chance against hanger rash, the Revic or Revoc bag lineup is definitely the best way to go. They are hands down the best protection for your plane. So you can order them off the Revic website. If you find it a little bit difficult to navigate, you can also contact us here at the Lighter Side of RC, and we can help you out with the order as well too. But Revic bags for the win on this plane. We ordered them in purple as well too. Unfortunately, they're not going to show up before we're done the plane, but you guys will see it in the background of videos coming up in the future, and great protection for this aircraft. All right, so what we can do in this case is we can use the 3-pin ash lock setup, and we can alternate them. So one side, let's just say our left side, we'll use the female version of the connector. The right side will use the male version of the connector. So the top wing only has one way to go together. The bottom wing will do the same thing. So basically on the fuselage side, you'll have alternating connectors. So pretty straightforward. The other nice thing about using these guys is they fit into the hole in the wing much better. So we can actually put a clip down in the bottom. We can have our wires go through the clip, and then when we put these wings inside the fuselage and the wing bags, we can just tuck these guys inside, have our excess wire hanging out here, and it's just going to be a nice, simple, light, clean way of doing this. So we're going to get this set up. It's pretty straightforward because those cardboard tubes are, I think, big enough to run our wire and connectors through, I'm pretty sure. So it shouldn't be a problem to get that stuff fed through. And these are pretty short little connections as well too. We're going to leave probably like maybe 5 inches hanging down, and should be no problem to connect the wings to the fuselage side. All right, if you can look inside there, we got one of our little clips installed. That's just going to hold the wire from disappearing inside the wing when this is in transport. So we have both of our leads done up here. So we will put a male and female ashlock connector on this side of the wing, and then we'll alternate on the other side inside the fuselage. So we're going to get these guys installed, and then once that's done, we'll get our servos installed in the wing. Okay, so servos are done on the upper wing. That's what this wing is. We ended up using the KST aluminum arms, going on the inner hole, nice and straight with the ball joint setup, same hardware that we used on the horizontal stabs or elevator surfaces. Just working on our joiner piece between the upper wing and lower wing. This is a fairly straightforward setup. Basically, you've got an airfoil shape to this thing. The wider piece faces forward. So if the table is our lower wing, that's how it's sitting on the wings, like that. So then these pieces only go together one way. And then there's a pin that goes through, just a piece of piano wire that holds these all together. So it should be a nice quick release. So what I did was got these lined up. Our upper pieces are laid out properly, and just in my brain, flip them around, and now we've got these guys lined up. Holes are pre-done already on the wings, and hardware is provided. Some nice, looks like Phillips/Robertson screws. So we'll use the supplied hardware to get those guys installed, and that looks good. So what we'll do is we'll screw these in without the pieces. We'll just get them screwed in place, take them out, harden the threads with CA, and then get them reinstalled in the actual mounts. All right, so we got both of our wings done. Pretty straightforward setup on these wings. You just have to pay attention to your joiner piece here. So, but ultimately this is quite nice because it's not super rigid or anything. So obviously a lot of the structure is in the actual wing mounting to the fuselage. This is going to add some structure up and down, but you can see here that it's not super rigid side to side, right? So we just added a little bit of a bend on our pins here, so they're nice and easy to deal with, and nothing really overly fancy about the piano wire pins other than they're super easy, so that's great. Also with our bag setup that we ordered from Revit, on one of the wing bags has the equipment pocket. We've added that in as well too. So the equipment pocket, the purpose of that is to put like the wing joiner pieces in, those piano wire pieces, so all those little things. Great reason to put the wing pocket or the equipment pocket on the wing bags. All right, and second wing is down here on our stand, hidden out of the way. So we've got our servos, which are on the underside of the wing, and then on the other side of the wing is our other joiner pieces. And there's a good shot of our servo linkage and control system. Accurate, no play, no slop, nothing. And those HV69 servos are perfection. So wings are done. Now there's quite a bit of servo travel on those wings. We've left the servo travel, I think, at 100%, and they don't lock or hit anything, which is great. But because you've got 4 ailerons on this plane, I'm assuming that you really won't need a ton of movement to make it very, very active. So that's one thing that we're not going to spend really much time on is the setup of the plane. You know, something like this, if you're competing in F3A competition, I'm assuming that you're going to be using rates, different flight modes, things like that, and that's something that needs to be set up by the owner. So next thing we're going to move on to is figuring out our battery tray. That one's a little bit tricky, and with the battery tray, we get into mounting the motor and figuring out the speed control. So we're going to get this kind of moving next so we can get our glue glued in, or get our glue setting while we are moving on to other things. So the kit comes with these little pieces. Now my kit only came with 2, and we need 4. So we could end up using these guys here. We'll just drill an appropriate hole. All right, we did a little bit of soldering here on the speed control. So we got our bullet connectors done on obviously the motor connection side, and we got our XT90 connector on the battery connection side. So that is done. And then we also got our bullet connectors done on the motor side. So this is ready to get installed in the plane, but we need to start checking our hardware first. I talked about this earlier in the video. Just like we do on jets, we want to go through and just confirm that we are okay with all of our hardware. So we're just going to take these guys off. And when I say okay, I mean that this is all Loctited, right? That's the key here. So we're going to check all of our fasteners, make sure they're Loctited, and then we'll get this bolted into the aircraft. All right, so motor's bolted on, very simple actually. And our additional little ears here, we've got used 3mm hardware on the ears, and we've got a washer on both sides. Very simple to put that together as well too. Really good access in here, which is awesome. So that's how everything is sitting inside the fuselage, and happy with that. That turned out really nice. Looks very crisp, clean, accurate. That contra drive is something else, man. It's pretty cool stuff. So next thing is to figure out where we're mounting our ESC. So if you look at the pattern of airflow here, so air's coming in a little bit right here, but mainly air's coming in right there, and we've got some exit ports right up here on the fuselage. So we do have good airflow throughout the fuselage, which is good. So what I'm thinking about is I don't really want to mount that ESC all the way down in the bottom. So I'm thinking about making a little, just 2 little angles coming down. So the ESC is going to be mounted at an angle like that. Battery tray, just for reference here, is going to be mounted sort of like that. So there should be no issues with interference or anything between the ESC and the battery tray. Obviously, we need to be mindful of our connectors here and the distance that we have. So, but I think that'll work out good. And then as far as cooling goes, if you look through the front, our little slot there, if we have that ESC sitting at an angle, it will get lots of airflow over top of it, which is perfect. So I'm going to work on our little legs next to get mounted, to get the ESC mounted. All right, so cool little setup here with the carbon plate. So we've got that all screwed into our speed control. You can see our front is shaped to fit the fuselage. So we're going to aero epoxy those guys in place. Obviously that makes the speed control removable. These pieces will be permanent, but that should work out perfectly. So we'll mix up some aero epoxy and get that guy glued in place. All right, working on the axles before we put our battery tray in. I guess not really axles, but axles, wheel pants, landing gear, or gear. And you can see here, you have to modify the wheel pant just a little bit to sneak that axle by. It's a very tight fit in there, but it does work. So there's the stock setup, and I've sanded a little bit out there. You drill a 5mm hole through the leg, 5mm hole through the wheel pant, and everything kind of just goes together. Here's a completed axle assembly. So I put a washer on there so you don't have a big gap in between the wheel, but these are the light aluminum wheels, and beautiful. good setup. Gear and everything is now installed, which is wonderful. I love the little red accents here. Of course, ties in with all the other red. Not that that really matters, but also when we bolted these down, use Loctite on the fasteners as well too, so those are nice and secure and strong. So with the landing gear done and finished, we're going to move back to the battery tray. Now I did a little bit of manipulation here with the battery tray. We got our rods cut to size, and I put a little bit of an angle on our rods as well too, just to fit the fuselage. I think that'll show up on camera maybe. Might show up. Anyways, this is the front, and so it's all sized and ready to go. So I can pop this in here and show you where it's going to sit. So we're just going to have it sit just like that. So that should work good, and that allows us good clearance underneath. Landing gear, we've got good access through the openings here in the battery tray, so I think that's going to work out very well. The only thing is our on-off switch on our ESC. So that is right here. So it's not overly long. So what I'm going to do is make two little tabs here that on-off switch can screw into right on the side of the battery tray. That obviously doesn't interfere with our straps, which go in the little slots here. And so that'll just be the on-off switch right there. All right, so just gluing in the battery tray. So what I do with this is I've got my pieces of wood installed on the battery tray. And then I take my aero epoxy and just tuck it around the kind of bottom portion of the carbon rod. And the reason I'm doing it this way is it kind of keeps it the cleanest possible. Rather than trying to get aero epoxy installed on there and then trying to get your piece of wood placed in, it's just a nightmare. So, and then we take our trusty bent screwdriver number 2, the original, and we're just going to push that piece of wood on. So, and then that squishes out the aero epoxy. And then we take some CA, this is medium CA, and we just soak it into the top where we skipped putting aero epoxy. And that will hold everything in place, a little bit of kicker, and let it do its thing. So that is how we glue that tray in. We've done these front 2, we've done the back 1. We'll finish that side. And what I'm doing to make sure this tray is level is as I'm working on it, I'm just tucking my head down like this and just checking to make sure that the profile is the same on the fuselage here compared to the tray. So we've got our receiver mounted here, our antennas mounted, we've got our leads coming from the ESC plugging into the receiver. So the red lead goes into our EXT port, which is going to supply power to the receiver, plus it's also giving us telemetry. And number 1 is our throttle channel, which is also going to be providing power to the receiver system. And then we've got elevator, rudder plugged in and run to their appropriate locations. What I'm going to do now is put the top wing on, flip this fuselage upside down, and I'm going to get my leads set up for connecting the wings. So I kind of envision this aircraft getting put together with the underside first and clipping that in through here. And then when you go to put the top side on, you're going to lay the wing in, you're going to plug those connectors in, lay the wing down. So that's kind of how I envision this wing going together. So we'll see how that works, but the first thing is we're going to put our underside on first, I think. Yes, the underside, I believe. So we've got the plane on the Lukey stand here, and I gotta say, this thing is incredible. I had the plane sitting on this stand upside down, put the bottom wing on, transferred it over here, and it's mind-blowing how light this thing is. It is so crazy. So we got our leads run for our lower wing. So we've got a clip installed here. Now the point of the clip is when these go into the Revic bags, like that set over there, actually the set for this plane is going to be purple, just like that. One thing you want to do, or at least I want to do, is I want to take these leads and tuck them inside the wing. So on this top wing, no problem, we'll do that. And the bottom wing, we've got a clip there just to make sure that everything's held in place nice and tight. And we've left enough slack so that can be folded back and tucked into the wing. That's important because if you don't, these connectors can dent the wing and damage the skin because it's so light. So we've got another clip installed there, and we've got a little bit of a looseness to undo those clips. And also we have about 4 inches of excess wire tucked inside the wing, so we can make this more loose if needed. So that's good. And just figuring out the top wing, and I think what's going to happen is, so this is how I envision the plane going together. Bottom wing goes on first, you got good access. Top wing, you bring the top wing in here. We're going to have our clips hanging right here. Clip them together, tuck the wing in place. So I'm going to get our wires run underneath the lip, across, and then down, straight shot right into the receiver. So that's how I envision this plane going together. So top wing's installed, super easy to install. The pins go together very nicely, and yeah, just beautiful setup here. So that top wing's all bolted together, the wings are fastened together, so that's all good. We're gonna flip this thing over now, and I still can't believe how light this thing is. We're gonna flip it over and work on the tail wheel is the next thing we need to do. And crazy. It's seriously, guys, it's hard to believe how light this aircraft is. It's just stellar. So the tail wheel we're using is another one from F3a, which is a Gator RC product. So fairly straightforward on this guy as far as install goes. Just going to get things mocked up and we'll take a look at how this goes in. Tail wheel, very simple to install. Use a 7mm drill bit to drill a hole into the actual fuselage. And then I think this was an Imperial bit, maybe 9/64 or something like that. And drilled that guy out, threaded it in, put it all together, and she's good. So there's 2 keeper bolts on here. So the first keeper bolt right there holds the wire into this assembly. The other one is on the leading edge. That holds the assembly to the tail wheel. So we just got everything centered, and that is good. So as far as operation goes, obviously when the rudder moves, so does the tail wheel. So aircraft is turned back over, and I want to figure out our prop blades here. And I was just doing a little bit of looking, and I was kind of worried that it'd be difficult to figure out how this prop goes together, but because you've got one long one, one short one going one direction, one going the other direction, but it's actually super simple. The base of these props are different. So you can see here, one has more material at the base, one has less material at the base. So if you try and take this prop here, which is the bigger prop, and you were to try and put it on the base here, the hole does not line up at all. So that means that this prop has to go onto this hub here, because the shorter one has to go there for everything to line up in the holes. So we're going to get this prop put together. Very simple now that we know which blades go where. Obviously the blade goes like this. It would not go like that because that would be backwards. Logo should face forward, I'm assuming. And so when this actually flies, what does that mean? It means that this is going to go this way, and the front portion of the assembly is going to go the other way. So this is going backwards to what we're kind of used to. The front one is going forward, or the correct direction of what we're used to. So if you think about it like a gas airplane, when you go to start it, you're spinning it that way. So interesting stuff. Well, that is some pretty serious prop action on the front of this plane. That looks like a flower. It's crazy. That's a lot of prop. Very, very wild. It's pretty wild. Really is. It's very interesting looking. So, yeah, kind of crazy. I would have thought initially that the bigger blades would have gone closer to the body, but I don't know. They only go together one way, right? So anyways, that's set up. Kind of tricky to get things all spaced out properly. There's, you know, a little bit of extra hardware here and there, but yeah, pretty cool stuff, that's for sure. It's very unique. So anyways, so yeah, with the prop done, I guess the next thing to do is to plug a battery in and kind of fire this thing up and see what happens. We haven't added our 900 receiver to this yet. We'll do that later on, but yeah, it's time to plug this thing in. So I don't have the battery layout that's going to be used in this aircraft, so I'm just going to be using a 6S battery just to get this thing powered up and whatnot, but it will be run off of a 10 cell, so 2 5-cell packs is the idea, but just for testing purposes, we're going to use this pack. All right, so we plugged in the battery, turned everything on, everything's fine. The first thing you have to do with the speed control is just go through the basic setup because it's only outputting 5 volts through the back. So we bump that up to 8 volts, which is good. And yeah, so let's turn this thing on. I did set up a throttle cut, and I'll show you guys here in detail in a second the details of the jetty system and the mise-en speed control and everything. So it's pretty cool how much options you have. So initially I set this up as a F3a plane, which of course makes sense. And just the number of options you have through here is crazy. F3a mode. Okay, so we're back to the main screen. We've got 8 volts on our RX. Yeah, so no problems at all. So right now my voltage here is showing 8.05 volts. And if we circle the sticks, you'll see the voltage actually goes up a little bit. So we're rock solid there with all the surfaces and stuff, which is great. So let's spin this thing over. So throttle cut is off. And all right, so we're rotating the correct direction. Oh yeah, lots of wind. Wow, super cool. That's impressive, very cool. Very nice. All right, throttle cut's back on. Let's take a look at all of our data that we've got available here. So I feel like with a plane like this, you'd want to spend a bunch of time just like setting things up, and obviously lots of flights as well too. So let's look at our telemetry here first. So timers, sensors, we'll go to our sensor logging. So we've got all of our mise-en stuff, right? So battery, capacity, revolution and RPMs, all that stuff there, temperature Beck, power and watts, all that. So all that's available. If we go into the actual speed control, so because it's an EXT device, it's going to show up, right? This is how you do all your programming. So all of your programming is done here from the radio. So what I did when I first turned this on is I went into the quick setup and just did a very basic rundown of the quick setup. Now, the quick setup gets you going, but then you can go into the expert menu and you can adjust all of those individual things. If we go into telemetry, the telemetry is going to show you all of your current stuff being outputted by telemetry. So Go into status, you can see there all the different items. They all have a check mark, so everything is A-OK. Now if we go back into our expert menu, this is where things get a little bit tricky, I guess, on the setup. You need to know some stuff. So, you know, you can go into all of these different things and set things up. Now, if we go into the controller function here, we've got lots of different things. Start acceleration response, delay, stop motor beep, all that stuff. Input control. So you can run this as a throttle channel like we're doing. So we've got one lead going into channel 1, which is our throttle channel. The other thing you can do is you can also run this off EX bus control. When we did our Bronco build, we had 2 of the Meson speed controls. We did them with the EX bus control. So this is all there, motor start, stop. Yeah, so anyways, that's good. We'll go back and back. And we go into motor. This is some of the stuff that we need to look up on our actual motor. I did reverse this because you don't necessarily need to switch the wires. You can just go in here and reverse the actual movement of the motor. So we need to look up the motor and find out our frequency, our timing, our number of poles, and all that stuff. All of this is default. Actually, I did go PWM frequency, so that is 8. So this is all the default numbers when you first turn this on. So it's motor with very low kilovolts. Interesting. Yeah, so lots of different options here in the speed control. We're not going to get into all of our setup stuff because we're not going to be flying this plane. So you got brakes, limits, protections, all that. So very, very cool stuff. All right, now as far as CG goes, we really don't need to do much to this plane because everything's kind of predetermined, right? Your batteries are going to end up on the tray here. You can shift those batteries forward and backwards a little bit. I can't remember exactly what the website calls for, but it's like 130 maybe, I'm just guessing. 130, 140 millimeters back from the leading edge of the wing, so it's going to be roughly here somewhere. But that stuff's all good. If I lift that plane right now from kind of that location, we don't have enough battery in this plane with our 6S batteries. So yeah, so that's pretty much all determined. Last things to do here is we need to make our battery cable for 2 batteries. So we're going to get that set up, and we need to add our 900 receiver. That's not really a big deal, but we'll get that stuff installed, and we are very close to wrapping this girl up. All right, now this is, I guess, fairly common knowledge, super simple to find this stuff on the internet, but if this represents the plug in the aircraft, this is the wiring harness we're going to do. So right now we've got this lead from a battery plugged in to the harness or the plug inside the aircraft. So what we want to do is we want to make a harness to go 5-cell, 5-cell, which will make a 10-cell power plant. Now this is considered series. If you're wiring in parallel, you'd be like this, and this doubles your capacity or your milliamps of your battery, but your voltage stays the same. What we're doing, the series connection, this doubles your voltage, but your capacity stays the same. So we've got the negative lead here. That negative lead is going to come to the negative lead on the connector. Positive comes out, goes to the negative side of this connector, and the positive side of this connector comes to the positive side of the connector that's plugging in. So this will basically live inside the aircraft. So we'll just have this sitting in there. It's a little difficult to get to this plug, but with this extension and everything, the batteries will be much easier to get to, and that's why I left everything the way I did. So I'm going to get this soldered up. Very simple. Try and keep this as short as possible. We might go something like that. So, about 4-inch leads or whatever that is, 3-4-inch leads. So we're going to get that soldered up, and I'll show you guys the final product. All right, so our flux capacitor is made. So this is exactly what we talked about. So we've got our plug that goes into the aircraft and our 2 battery leads. Now, obviously, if you plug this into the aircraft and you plug a battery in here, nothing's happening because this needs to be connected. So you got to keep that in mind. Obviously, you could make a plug that goes in there that connects those if you only wanted to use one battery, but this plane is specifically designed for a 10S setup. So the other thing I did is I did a bit of research and found the manual for the contra drive from these guys here. And basically I went on there and they gave some very basic specifications on some of the initial settings that we were looking at in our Jetty radio. So we're going to get those set up as per the manual, and that takes care of pretty much that stuff. Easy peasy. All right, so just working on the last couple things here. Next thing we're going to do is set the incidence of the stab. So there's a couple ways to do it. Lassie recommends 2 ways. Number 1 for conventional flying is going to be the stab having negative half a degree compared to the wing, I believe is what the instructions say that he emailed to me. For zero gravity flying, he calls it, which would be, in my opinion, same up, same down. We're going to neutral the stab to match the wing. So we've got our Robart incidence meter, and we're just going to get that set up on the wing here, and we are going to match that to the match the horizontal stab to the wing. All right, so we've matched the stab to the wing, so they're perfectly in line, they're centered even with each other. Next thing we're going to do is get our 900 set up to the radio and then bound to the radio and then installed in the aircraft. So we don't need the aircraft on when we do this. We can go to Model, we can go to Advanced Properties, Wireless Modes Trainer, and we are going to enable the 900 backup. So then what we'll do is we will install our bind plug into the EXT port of the 900. We will power the 900 and pair module. And there we go. So we can pull our bind plug out, and now the 900 is paired to the aircraft. Now the 900 is a great solution for this scenario because it weighs almost nothing. It's a great backup system. It's going to plug into our E1 port of our primary receiver and work great. So we're going to do a couple things here to get that set up. So go Model, Device Explorer, and I think we've got to have everything on to be able to do this. So we will get this installed in the aircraft next, and then we will be able to get this guy set up. All right, and actually to keep things simple, I just powered on the aircraft. We still have our 900 powered on here. So you can see the 900 shows up. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to go into our Rex 10, and we're going to go to Receiver Outputs, my apologies, Alternative Pin Configuration, and we want to change E1 to an EX bus input backup. Now we're going to get warnings while we're doing this because it's looking for another receiver. So now the 900 is going to get plugged into the E1 port of our primary receiver, and then we want to go to our 900 and we want to just do a couple checks here and make sure. So we're going to go output 11 milliseconds, low voltage alarm. We'll go 6.5. Alternative pin configuration. So E1 and E2 we want to change as EX bus. There we go. So now when we plug this into the system, our E1 port is going to go to E1 on the primary receiver. All right, so we got our 900 installed in the aircraft, so that just plugs right into the primary receiver right there. 900's right there. We've got our antennas mounted one side to side, one up and down. I like to mount these either with black Gorilla Tape or the clear Gorilla Tape. It works really well, nice and simple. I use the clear in here just so it's nice and clean looking. So now what we're going to do is we're going to plug a battery in, we're going to turn the radio on, turn the plane on, and we'll confirm through the radio that the 900 works as it should. All right, so we'll come here, we'll turn the plane on. Okay, so plane is on. And then now you can see we've got 2 check marks there. So one for our primary, one for our backup. Okay, so what we can do now is we can confirm and check to make sure that this works. So we'll go to Advanced Properties, Wireless Modes Trainer, and we will push the Function 1 button. So we can disable our primary module, or we can also disable all except 900 megahertz backup. So right now, aileron, surfaces, and everything work. So we will disable all except 900, and everything still works. Radio is telling us right now that backup transmission is active, so that is perfect. There we go. So now we're back to normal. The other thing I did on the radio is I went in and made some flight modes. So this is normally our flap switch / flight mode switch. So I added some different rates on the plane. So I'll show you what we did. So dual rates. So normally I'd have a separate one for gyro off. Of course, there's no gyro on this plane. So we've got 40%, 40%, 100% on rudder. I just kept the same on all of them. So we've got low rates, I guess, medium rates 60%, high rates 80%, and high rates is going to be a lot. But that at least gives us a starting point when the owner wants to fly it. And I think low rates 40% is going to be good / docile. So we've done those as well too. So 900 backup works. Great solution for a setup like this. All right, and while we're here, I got our connector installed. So this is, of course, where we're plugging our batteries into. So this will make it a lot easier to plug the batteries in, and that's going to work great. So for now, we'll just tuck this down in the battery tray like that, so it's not flopping around, and that is good. Before we took the wing off as well too, I took a ruler and tucked it against the side of the fuselage, and I measured back 170 millimeters. That's the suggested starting point for CG that Lassie recommends. Lassie's the manufacturer. And I marked that on both sides. So that's 170 millimeter mark. So this plane's very simple. I mean, I don't want to demean it, but you know, it's almost like a foamy is what it feels like as far as weight goes. So, you know, when you go to do your first flight on this thing, you could really just take your fingers, put them on those CG marks, and use that as your starting point. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that, and it's going to be wicked. Well, guys, and that wraps up the Glacial aircraft project. What a phenomenal aircraft this is. Just getting it put together. Very cool experience. Thank you to the owner, Jürgen, for allowing me to put this together, and great experience doing this aircraft. There's very few jet aircraft companies that we deal with on a regular basis that produce something this nice. When you look at the date stamp on this thing that the manufacturer puts in, that Lassie puts in, I think it was number 10, and it was produced in like September, I believe, is what I remember from memory. It's inside the fuselage there, and we do still have to put our lighter side plaque in there, but just phenomenal. The quality is amazing. The weight of this thing is unreal, how light it is. It is like, I don't know, it feels, without batteries, it feels like it's about 8 pounds. It's nuts. It's so light. Absolutely incredible. What a cool aircraft. Very cool. Obviously, it's a fairly pricey aircraft for what it is, but the quality, like I said, is absolutely outstanding. Very unique process putting this thing together, using some different servos. The contra drive was a neat scenario. You know, some of the challenges I found during the project was putting the contra drive in, and of course the landing gear, you know, getting all those things lined up, the formal work and everything. Very, very fun project. So not sure when this maiden is going to happen, but obviously whenever the owner picks it up, whenever we get it to him and he decides to maiden it, I'm very excited to hear his response and his thoughts on this aircraft. Very, very cool. It's truly unique. Some people during this project have said this thing is ugly, and that's okay. I'm a fan of unique things as well too, and this is definitely a unique plane. And seeing some videos on this and watching some videos on these Glacial aircraft, amazing flying aircraft, and rightfully so, because they're an F3a aircraft, it makes sense for them to be as such. So thank you to all you guys that have supported the channel. Thank you, channel members, for being channel members. If you're not sure what a channel member is, channel members, they subscribe to the channel. It's a paid thing, but they get early access to videos. So all of our videos are released on the channel about 1 to 2 weeks ahead of time, and channel members get to see those videos as soon as they're uploaded to YouTube, and everybody else gets to wait until they're released on YouTube. So thank you, channel members, for watching. Thank you guys for tuning into this unique project, and stay tuned for some really cool stuff, and we'll see you in the next video.